It's time for another episode of the Cultural Hall, an articles of news episode, as that music would indicate. And okay, let's take the ball. Let's put it on the roulette wheel, and let's see who we come up with. It's Russ
I
Wild
really,
from
I
Texas.
really want you to have like a picture of like all the potential hosts, like with like
I think
spinning around like the Price is right wheel, and then it could land on me.
I think
And
that's
then
I think that would be a fun idea one time. Everyone be available,
just
and
have
then
everyone there and be like randomly like, all right, the rest of you leave.
yep, goodbye. Or like, maybe that's how we do the next story and then we take the things off the wheel. Doesn't matter. How are you, Russ Wild from Texas? A soundproof booth.
I coming to you from a soundproof booth in an undisclosed location. It's all right, man. I just got over the COVID and yeah, so that was fun. We have our friends have parked their camper trailer at our house. And so when I tested positive, my wife banished me to the camper trailer. So I've been camping in my yard for the last week or so, and just recently joined the living. And yeah, it was good times.
How do your
Good
neighbors feel
times.
about the camper in the front yard of your house?
My yard is such that we don't really see our neighbors.
Oh,
We
good.
could put any number of things on our property and the neighbors wouldn't see them. So nobody minds.
You should do it.
We Texas is big. We got 5 acres of space to hide things.
Yeah, if you said you had 5 acres in Salt Lake County, people would be like, what kind of, real estate mogul is Russ Wild? When you have 5 acres in Texas, it's like, young
It's
guy
not even
starting out.
That's not even a ranch.
Yeah. Although
So
you could, I would like the Wild Ranch.
I at one point I had my employment on Facebook listed as the Wild Ranch for Exceptional Children.
Mm-hmm.
And I would periodically get real estate or ranch related Facebook ads because of that, which cracked me up.
Nice, nice. So the COVID, better the second time around or
I think this might
overrated?
actually be my third time, and I
Okay.
would say of the 3 times, it was the second worst. I don't know. It was weird. I didn't feel really sick initially. We just whenever the government offers the free tests, I request them and they mail them to me.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a cabinet full of COVID tests. So I'm inclined to use them whenever like I get the sniffles or
Yeah.
anyone in the house gets the sniffles. So I started not feeling good, and I did the test, and I wasn't really expecting anything, and it came back positive.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I caught it early, but I don't know if that created the psychosomatic thing where that I felt like it was worse.
Mm.
Like, oh man, I got it. This isn't a normal sickness. This is the disease. And so
Well,
then I
and
just kind of,
and it could have been exacerbated by the fact that you were exiled to the camper in the front yard.
yeah. Well, thankfully, winters in Texas aren't that bad. But yeah, it
Yeah.
was my biggest struggle was poor Wi-Fi reception. But I don't know. I didn't. It's been worse before, but I feel like this time I was more tired
Mm.
and I had a really bad headache. So it'd be like, gosh, I just feel like I should lay down. And then I'd be like, oh, I was asleep for an hour
Mm.
randomly. So
Well, I
that
want you
was
to
how it
know
kind of
that you
played
were
out.
missed as part of the year in 2023 news review.
I missed it. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, there were several people who said, "What? No Russ?" And I said, "He might die." In fact, if you listen to it, I think I might have made it a little bit more dramatic than it actually was. But
I
take it,
mean,
Ferris,
you
take
never
it.
know. I was just trying to make sure I didn't kill other people.
Mhm,
That was my
mhm.
number one priority with the week-long camping trip.
It's interesting that your inclination is to get the free tests and then test it at the drop of any sort of hat. I don't do that at all. I have had the test when I tested positive a couple years ago. Pretty sure that I've had it since then. But to me, I just I don't know, for whatever reason, there's some level of power in ignorance in not knowing. Is that terrible? That makes me horrible.
Yeah, I think that makes you horrible. I mean, I think it's the idea of I mean, like doesn't really like the sickness doesn't change, right? You're still
Sure.
sick.
Sure.
So, but I think like I feel like knowing that I had it, like I, you know, I obviously didn't go to work, and I
Sure.
feel like I might have been inclined to do things like that, which I'm sure like that's how I got it. People who like, oh, I'm just sick. It's not a big deal. I'm going to go do whatever. And then I got it from them. So
I was at a work thing the other night where We had gone through, it was a rehearsal. We'd gone through the entire rehearsal. And then at the end, they're like, you guys might notice that this individual is not here. It's because they've tested positive for COVID. And all of us were like, why wouldn't you tell us this at the start of this? We have all been around this individual for the last several days. And now at the end of all of us touching, breathing, spitting on each other, etc. Now you're telling it? Perfect. All right. Well, if we've got it,
Yeah.
we've got it at this point.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
I was going to tell you I evaded a calling the other day, and then we'll take a break and we'll get into some
Oh,
actual articles of news. You want to hear this?
yeah. Did you just say no?
No. Here is what it is a bizarre thing that we do in our church, and I want to know what you would do as well. So I don't know if this is how it is in Texas, but certainly here in Utah, and certainly in my neck of the western part of the Salt Lake County, there is a big push right now about the self-reliance courses that the church
Oh,
has,
sure.
right?
Yeah.
Is that a big thing in
Yeah.
Texas going on
Yeah.
right now too?
We've had various courses there. There's a series of them starting up in our stake.
Yeah, so there is then I get it must be church wide, or at least North America church wide, that we're like, hey, we've got these things, and they're very developed courses.
Yeah. I've
It's
actually taken one. I've done the start your own business one.
okay. And so from your perspective in taking that course, valuable, worth your time?
Um, it was okay.
It's
I mean,
fairly
I think
rudimentary, as I understand it. It's like if you would be coming to that going, I just had the idea about starting my own business, and for someone like that, it might be
I
really
mean,
good.
it was interesting. It kind of, I think it's a good starting point. I think, perhaps I think that some of those courses could be better taught with like a real subject matter expert.
Mm-hmm.
Like sometimes I felt like I knew more than the person teaching the class or leading the discussion,
Right.
which isn't necessarily bad. It's kind of designed to like, anybody could lead it theoretically.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's largely one of those, what you put in is what you get out of it. And I probably didn't put as much as I should have into it, but
No,
it's an interesting.
Don't do that to my Russ.
But
Don't
yeah,
do that. Don't
did they
shame
want
my
you to
Russ.
teach a class? I would have taken the what class was it they wanted you to teach?
So I am very interested. There's the it's like financial wellness or financial development or something like that. I'm very
Okay,
interested in that, and fairly vocal about it. What it mostly is like budgets and things like that. Now, here's the deal. I have said, hey, I'm interested in that. And the way that our stake started it was, are you interested in these courses? Here's the 6, I think, different courses that there are.
Right.
And so I said, yes, I am interested in taking that course. And then no sooner than I had responded to the email than I get a text message that says, hey, the stake president would like you to teach this course. And they were like, well, take some time to think about it and let us know. And here is the thing to me, I guess, that why I said, well, let me think about it. I would much rather take the course before I teach the course.
Right.
Is
Go through it and
because see what it contains, be knowledgeable about, all of the material, but then also there is nothing that would make me more mad, because it's like a 12-week 2-hour commitment or 8-week 2-hour commitment, something like that. There was nothing that would make me more mad than if I show up at the church or the stake center, or I think in the summertime they're going to do them. We have a Bowery. Our stake has a Bowery that we use.
Obviously.
To go to this and have it be someone who, like the substitute teacher in your high school is thumbing ahead. All right, so a budget is, that would drive me crazy.
And to the point, like when I took it, the person who was leading the course, like, was participating too, which I think they had actually been through it the time before. But as they would go through the assignments that we'd have each week and the discussions that we'd have, they'd also participate and do all the assignments and things. So like it probably would have worked, but I understand the hesitancy to not.
So then they were like, hey, are you going to attend this class? And I said, well, when is it? And I can't attend anyway. So it wouldn't have mattered in the first place, because I've got the weird schedule.
Yeah, you do. That reminds me of when I
go ahead.
Narrowly avoided teaching seminary, but that's
oh my gosh,
whole nother story.
Awesome. You would
I've
be
done
an
it in the
awesome
past.
seminary teacher.
We've done it in the past. It just was a matter of it. There's 3 different high schools that attend in our ward, and when we finally got down to figuring out who would actually attend, the schools started at wildly different times, and so there was either like kids would have to be there at like 5:45, and then
Jeez.
have like an hour plus break after the class before they could go to school, and it just wasn't going to work, and so.
A question for you, and I don't expect you to have the answer, but maybe something that we bring up as a brief discussion here, and then maybe in a future episode. Contact at theculturehall.com if you have some weigh in on this. Is why as a church do you suppose we don't take more advantage of technology when it comes to things like church and seminary? And let me tell you what I mean. So I know that the ideal is that I meet with similar aged peers, or similar age people, or people that are in my local area, and we meet together and we worship and we're able to have that fellowship, right? That is the ideal. I'm able to get to know you in proximity, we're in the same place, etc., right? Ideal. What I don't understand is where that may not be possible for people. Like, why don't we have the North America seminary class that is live at, there's one that's live at 6 a.m. Mountain Time, one that's live at 6 a.m. Central, one that's live at 6 a.m. Eastern. And if weather is bad, I woke up late, I live in some place that makes it impossible, the car, the family, the whatever the thing is, why can't I log on and we're all feasibly studying the same thing and be able to study with those people, and those become my network as far as that goes. And then other times I'm able to meet in proximity. And then similarly, I get why, with your ward, that a lot of places don't do the broadcasts anymore. Some still do. And I think that's incredible for people that are either, homebound or, you know, maybe have health concerns, etc. Why we don't, as an English speaking church, have a sacrament meeting that is broadcast for anyone that might be on vacation, right? It's not the ideal. It's not what it's not a replacement of church.
Like the old thing they used to show on KBYU or BYU
Right.
TV of like a sort of sacrament meeting without the sacrament, where they'd
Right.
sing songs, and
Right.
a well-produced
Yeah. A well
thing.
produced current day.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily like your Brad Wilcoxes and your Emily Bell Freemans. Maybe we get the B or the C League speakers,
Or
and
even
they
not. Like
run
it
through.
just like it could be a rotating assignment from like go through the stakes in Salt Lake, and you just show up at the conference center one week, and I've been asked to give a talk at the,
Yeah,
no, I think you could make the case that that could be better than like some of the poor webcam setups I've seen.
sure.
I mean, I currently do the Zoom in our church for our ward,
Hmm.
and I make it a point to like make it look as good as I can with the
Sure.
equipment that I have. But
Yeah,
like,
resources and time, right?
I mean, it's like I make sure I like have a microphone that you can hear, and
Mhm.
like I zoom in so it looks like a television show. But
Right, right. But I just mean, I like for we have an English one, we have a Spanish one, we have a Portuguese one, right? I mean, that takes it. No offense to
there's
anyone
more
who speaks the
language
other
than
languages.
that.
There's more languages, obviously within the church, but that would cover a lot of people. That, and to the other side of that, maybe I still go to my ward and the talks are horrible. And I know everyone's like, listen, if you feel the spirit, if you have the spirit, you'll be touched. And it's like, am I? Will I? If I could be able to have a sacrament meeting that say I just wanted more, that I would be able to listen to. I think that I don't know. I don't know why we don't do that.
Sounds like you've created a calling for yourself.
Yeah, but I've never done it. So I'm going to wait until I've done it and then I can do it. All right. Let's take a break. We got plenty of news we got to get to. Lots of the things have been happening. We'll take a break and come back in the second half and do actual articles of news. Here in the second half of Articles of News, we do actual articles of news. Hit it, Peter. And away we go. Maybe one of the biggest stories, at least online anyway, Mississippi bishop
Mississippi.
gets up, 7 and some change at least in the video that I saw on Reddit, gets
Yeah,
up
I
and
thought it
says,
looked like it might have been part would have been cut out, but yeah, it was about 7 minutes.
Says, hey, you know what? They've asked me to do some things that I morally can't agree with, and so I'm stepping down from being the bishop. As I understand it, it was not the like 4 or 5 years. He wasn't that far into it.
Seemed like a year or two, like close to two. Maybe he said
Uh,
2.5 years ago when he got the call. He was, and part of the reason he said he stayed as long as he did was because of the youth in the ward and his involvement with them.
yeah, being able to help. So there are several things around this that we don't know. We don't. There are several people, and I think we can probably guess, which is always great for the
We
reporting.
don't know. Let's just guess.
Let's just speculate. A lot of people feeling like it's something around reporting, mandatory reporting, or not reporting, some level or some issue of abuse. I don't know that that's been said that straightforward. So I don't want to so
I
much.
assume we'll hear from him at some point.
Yeah, yeah,
About the why.
yeah. The exact why, because he did say it's some things that I can't morally get behind doing or not doing.
And
But
then again, it is possible that he couldn't. Like he could feel like it wouldn't be if I'm making a personal moral stand that I'm not going to do whatever they're asking him to. There may be also part of that would be something he can't talk about that he would feel equally compelled to like keep the confidences of people.
Yeah, but we live in the 21st century where people don't just keep confidences of people, and if you can put it out somewhere and get some attention from something.
I mean, like, by videotaping a sacrament meeting talk. Although I couldn't tell, that could have been the Zoom from that ward.
No, it was a sibling, as I
It
understand
was
it,
it was
brother or
I
someone.
mean, like, I know that's who released the video. I just didn't know that. Like, it could have been. I've seen worse angles for broadcasted sacrament meetings.
Yeah,
But,
so
but
it's a
it
few,
it probably was.
it brings to mind a few things. One, because we don't know all enough about the information to know, oh, this is why I didn't. So at least at this point, there's not much interest in me to sort of talk about that. But is it too much? Is it over the top? Is it inappropriate to do your like leaving that way? Or
I mean, I would say if you're leaving the calling,
Mhm.
it's probably it's probably not, and it's probably fine. I would think. I think the place where I get a little uncomfortable, where when he put out his TikTok video with his family on Saturday, the following Saturday after he
Mhm.
gave his talk,
Mhm.
where he essentially it seemed pretty clear that like he wasn't just leaving the calling, he was leaving the church.
Right.
And so like that I think maybe is like I don't know that we need hundreds of people to get up and speak about why they're leaving the church.
Right.
Like I mean, obviously that's not the place, and I think he handled what he did well.
Mhm.
Like I didn't feel like it was. It's not like somebody got up and said these are the things I think are wrong with the
Yeah,
church,
yeah,
and
yeah.
like
Here's my
he didn't
CES, essentially my CES letter of why I'm leaving the church. Yeah.
he didn't pull a Martin Luther and like pound his grievances on the pulpit, but like also like I don't think we need. Could you imagine if fast and testimony meeting became public? Why I'm leaving the church.
Right. Right. But so I've tried to wrap my head around like why he would do that. And I guess a couple things, right? Where he probably will not be in that community anymore, where he's essentially leaving the church, stepping away from the church anyway. Uh there would be a lot of people that would have questions. Why isn't
Right.
the bishop anymore? Why is he not here? What was the thing that made him whatever, right? Uh
Right.
to me, it almost seemed like I'm doing this here because I don't want to have 100 other conversations around this. It seems sort of clean to just be like, I'm going to be respectful in what I'm going to say. I'm going to do this way so that this can just be the thing, and then it can be done, and I can sort of, wash my hands of it in the whole thing. I remember about a decade ago, I was in a sacrament meeting, and our bishop was getting released, and it was not the time that he should have gotten released. And so he got up and he just said that he was so sorry and that he, felt like he felt so much love for the word, but he didn't say why he was sorry. He just said,
Right.
oh, I'm just so sorry. And this has been an amazing opportunity. And, I'll miss you. And that guy has subsequently, at least as far as I know, left the church. His social media would indicate to me that he's left the church. And what had happened was he'd had an affair with another person in the ward, and apparently I was the only one that didn't know that. But there was this thing, and I was like, wow, this is strange. But he got up and he said, hey, you know what? I'm so very sorry, and I won't be the bishop anymore, and that's that. I think that that's a tremendously I'm going to use the word ballsy because I can't think of anything else right now. Like on behalf of the leadership to be like, hey, in that scenario, hey, yeah, we'll allow you the opportunity to say something, because that could have
Right.
gone very differently. Same with this bishop as well. It could have gone very, very differently.
Yeah, I don't know quite how the timeline of when he talked to his stake leaders, or maybe
Mhm.
that's what the video was for. He was just going to text it to him afterwards. I don't.
Hey guys, in
This
case you
is what
missed
I
this
did.
today,
It's
they're
what I
just
said in sacrament meeting today.
uh yeah, I mean, it's hard. It's hard for me without knowing all the details exactly. But I mean,
I
one of
mean,
one of the great things, the blessings of the gospel that we have, is that we want people to worship according to the dictates of their conscience, and so it's hard to come at him to be like, "Yeah, you shouldn't have
yeah.
done that."
The thing I think is interesting looking at that is I think there's a generational difference that I feel like younger folks,
Hmm.
our age and younger, are probably more inclined to say no to callings.
Yeah.
And there's probably, I know people use the term nuanced members a lot to talk
Hmm.
about things like, oh, I don't agree with the way the church does this with the abuse hotline.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
I don't agree with that, but I can for whatever reason understand why they do. And so like to me, it doesn't affect my testimony. I still want to be a member, but I don't like that. And to be for a person in that position, I could see being called as a bishop to be a concern like, hey, I don't know that I'll ever have to deal with this, but like I don't want to be in the position that I have to deal with this.
Right. Right.
And so maybe we're missing out on bishops that otherwise would. And how does it get harder and harder to find
Yes.
people to serve in those roles? And
100%.
yeah, it's an interesting. I think it's the. I wouldn't say it's the beginning. I think we've been seeing this happening. I think we'll see a lot more of this in the future of people not being willing to serve, or leaving when things get into a tricky situation.
And I think there's power that if you know that you're either not going to do it or you have lost the whatever to do it. We both know people that will continue to do something long after they should have
Right.
set that thing down or said, I'm not going to do this anymore. And it doesn't serve anyone. But
Right. Yeah. That's so. Yeah. Could he have like muddled on for the next 2.5 years? Probably.
yeah.
But is it probably better for a new bishop to get in there and start the healing process in that ward? I can't imagine he's in a large city, and I can't imagine his congregation is very big. I mean, it's obviously a ward, but
Well, and it's something that you obviously, I hope, have to talk about. I don't think it's something that you can just be like, well, last Sunday sure was weird. So we're excited to talk about the Book of Mormon this year, and
mhm.
let's talk about the opening pages. At least I know that that's the tendency for some. I hope that that would not be what they would do. Something like that is so jarring, especially to a small religious community like you think about in the South with
Yeah.
an LDS congregation. Like you have
Well,
to dive right into that.
assuming that that first video was posted relatively shortly after when they first did it, which I assume it was New Year's Eve when he
Mhm.
made that thing, which would have meant the next Sunday would have been a fast and testimony meeting.
Yeah.
They were obviously calling a new bishop, so if you follow the normal practice that I've always seen, the new bishop would get to talk with maybe their wives or whatever. So
Mhm.
maybe that the testimony meeting was, usurped by that. But
Yeah.
theoretically, the next Sunday could be a testimony meeting in that ward. And having been in a bishopric and like controlled the mic button, I wouldn't want to be the one making the decision on like who needs to be cut off in the weeks to come.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Or even in that situation, like I may have been, I don't know if it's how his counselors felt about what was going on, but I could feel some real hesitation. Like, what should I do something here?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, he didn't say anything overtly inappropriate, but you know,
Yeah.
Who knows?
Remains to be seen. More details obviously coming out of that. Let's get to some other stories. They announced the mission leadership assignments. 144 missions and mission presidents assigned.
That's 288 people total
Well,
with
thank
their
you very much. I
companions.
appreciate that. There
I
are
found it weird though that they called them their wives the companions.
mission
I feel like
presidents and companions. Yeah, they're both
I
presidents.
I just yeah, I feel like there's probably a better way to do that.
Yeah, mission
Especially with the
presidency. They're
fact,
presidents, co-presidents.
yeah, I feel like there's probably a better way to do that, especially as we're getting to a point where I feel like the number of sisters and elders, um, I feel like there's a role there for a strong
Well,
leader present,
and
a strong adult leader presence for the sisters.
Well, and I can't remember who it is, and I wish I could. I'm racking my brain right now, but there was a mission president and companion where I was like, this is clearly happening because she is a tremendous individual, and he's sort of coattailing this thing, right? It'd be like if you and your wife got called as mission presidents. No offense. Actually,
Yeah,
every offense intended. But
no, I know that at Zone Conference, her talk would be longer than mine and more
yes,
meaningful and more
yes,
memorable. And like when I was 20 years out of it, the missionaries that would come to our house to see us later would be coming to see her and not
yeah,
me.
yeah, 100%. All to say, there's 36 new missions that will be a part of this whole, adding the mission presidents to the field. That's 450 missions worldwide. Some speculation that missions like temples that will have 500 by the year 2030, both of temples and of missions of the church. So that's kind of an exciting thing. One of the big deals, at least as far as local, with the mission president assignments, we know where Lloyd Newell, the voice of music and the spoken word, is going. It's headed off to Los Angeles. He will be the
He's
mission president of the Los Angeles mission.
he's going to Hollywood.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be great? He gets a little side gig and is like, guys, I'm out. I
He's
can't
like,
in good conscience.
I got some voice work here, and
Yeah.
it turns out I have a knack for it.
Yeah. What else? Take a story. Tell me where you want to go.
I thought that story. I can't remember the town. I'm trying to find it right now. The carbon monoxide poisoning at
Oh,
church
in Monroe,
in Monroe.
Utah. Yeah.
The idea that like the way that I've heard it talked about. It was like some people like that they got home and they didn't got home from church and didn't feel good, and like the bishop called to check on them, and it was like they're like, yeah, we've had headaches since church, and it was like, you need to go to the hospital right now, and then we're there for hours getting treatments from the carbon monoxide poisoning. What a what a thing. I
Yeah.
mean, we've had strange building issues at my where we meet,
Uh-huh.
but I've never thought of like the building poisoning people.
Yeah.
Although we do have members in our ward that have said in the past that they were allergic to the building, which I also thought was amusing. But
Well, I mean, yeah, depending on how sensitive you are to some of those things, certainly. I mean, people's perfume. There are some women's perfume that I'm just like, what are we doing here? Mostly older women in my particular ward where I'm just like, what is happening?
I guess for me, the thing about this story that I find fascinating is obviously older buildings, like there's the code requirements that maybe they weren't in existence when the building was built. And, it's hard to stay up to date on making sure that every building meets modern codes. But I'm curious to see what the church does moving forward. They've had this happen. Like,
Mhm.
are they going to address that in buildings, like to make sure there aren't problems moving forward? So I
Well,
think it'll be interesting to see.
well, twofold. I know at least locally that the churches now, where they weren't required before, carbon monoxide detectors in each of the buildings. Just a simple thing. In fact, a lot of the new, I think that in my studio here, I think that my fire detector is also a carbon monoxide detector. It's kind of a two-in-one.
Right.
Um, that
Yeah,
that
I'd
like
assume
our
modern things are all like that.
yeah, our church building now has the little unit that plugs in to I think they have it in two or three of the rooms, like the Relief Society room, the main hallway, and then one on the other side of the building of carbon monoxide detectors. Those are brand new after this story came out, but it was something with the furnace,
Right. Yeah.
faulty something within the furnace, and I
Yeah,
mean,
I would think that there would be, you wouldn't need to put Oh, them all over the building. There's obviously carbon monoxide comes from the combustion of stuff. So where that was happening, like
Sure,
to have an alarm in those places would make
sure.
sense and it'd be relatively easy to do.
Yeah,
But
but
interesting. It beats the
scary.
yeah, for sure. And I mean, thankfully nobody seems to have lasting damage. But like that's a seems like there'd be a lot of carbon monoxide gas in such a big space, a big open space, unless maybe they were in a classroom or something that made it worse. Maybe
Hmm.
that's, I don't know. It seemed like a
Well, I
lot of
mean,
people to have problems.
some of those older buildings, maybe it was just there in the chapel. I heard that like I think that you know they're the way that these things are rated, like if you have like between a 1 and a 5, it's normal. You know, there's like that normal amount, and then in this particular thing, it was like a 15 or a 20. So it was just an exorbitant amount of carbon monoxide. And geez, yeah, glad that they're safe. I remember when I was serving my mission, not I wasn't at this particular zone meeting, but there was a zone meeting where um missionaries all had to be rushed to the hospital. Every single missionary that had a cupcake, because someone who made the cupcakes for the missionaries put sleeping pills, like a bucket ton of sleeping pills in the cupcakes for the missionaries. And so people were like, you know, drowsy and, you know, passing out essentially. And everyone's like, what in the world? And they distinguished that it was if you had a cupcake, that's why you were doing that, and so on and so forth. And it was a big deal out in around Toledo about 25 years ago. And it turned out it was the kid of the like Relief Society president who was mad at their mom for, you know, something, and decided that she
Wow.
would get back at her by getting her in trouble by putting sleeping pills in the cupcakes. Everyone was fine, but it was a notorious story of, oh my gosh,
And
that happened.
and here we just didn't have sacrament meeting one week because a skunk had, got under the building and did its skunk business.
No, really?
So
Ugh.
yeah. But that didn't poison anyone.
No, but still, it's pretty bad. I want to take you here. I think this story is interesting. How many languages would you suppose the Book of Mormon has been translated in?
Well, based on the number of meetings you want to be broadcast in
Mhm.
different languages, four.
Yeah. Thanks.
English, Spanish, Portuguese, and I don't know, whatever
And then
else.
another one I think I said, right?
Yeah.
Um, it is
Is-
well, and I should also say recently the church announced its 200 millionth copy of the Book of Mormon has been printed and subsequently distributed. 113 language,
Mormon is so upset about not getting royalties.
yeah, 113 languages is what at least a portion of the Book of Mormon has been translated into. 92 full translations of the Book of Mormon. So then those other 21 just have selections. Interesting to note, the first printing in English, 1830, obviously. Second translation, Danish in 1851. Then German, French, Italian, Welsh, Hawaiian, Spanish, Swedish, and Maori. So significant to know that those are the languages that the Book of Mormon has gone in, and the fact that there's 200 million copies. I placed at least 1,000 of those.
At least.
At,
I am
least.
excited this year to be studying the Book of Mormon in Klingon. I'm just,
You know that there's an elven, some, you know, pirated black, you know, black market copy of the elven copy of the Book of Mormon, because those people get that
those
obsessed with
people.
stuff.
Who are
Yeah,
those
those people.
people?
You know, those people.
Yeah.
Klingon,
But
really? No?
if you're going to use the I was trying to think how Tolkien would have described the languages, but yeah. I'm sure there's one somewhere, at least portions.
What other story have you that you wish to speak of?
So I'm interested. I haven't been to Salt Lake downtown in a while.
It's a
I
mess.
generally it's a mess,
It
but
is.
some of the areas around Temple Square are starting to open back up,
Yep.
which I'm kind of intrigued with. Like, what are we seeing? Is it have you been down there lately? What's back up? I know they talked about some gardens around the assembly hall and around the I guess the old tabernacle. I'm guessing,
Yeah.
but is that
So
whole area starting to take new shape? I mean, obviously the temple's still under construction.
yeah, yeah. So it's starting to take shape. It's still a mess if I'm being candid, at least the last time I was down there, which is maybe about a month ago. You can, if you remember where the church office building is and where that horrible fountain that was on the west side of the plaza, nope, east side of the plaza by the church office building. So if you're looking at the church office
That
building,
like reflection pool kind of thing, or are you thinking
there,
of something different?
so that's it. That's Temple Square. You have the temple, and then there's a reflection pool where everyone gets engaged by. That's not the one I'm
Right.
talking about. If you
Okay.
went further east, there was
Okay.
the one that was right by. I think that's maybe West Temple, and it sort of was just like the water is in a pool, and then it goes down to a second pool, and it leaked horribly, and. You could kind of cut across from like the Lion House, get yourself a roll, and then go see the folks at the church office building, and go up to the observatory and try and do a land jump off the top and then get arrested like that one guy did 20 years ago. And now there's fences. I digress. Anyway, that whole place where the that plaza is and that fountain was, that is reopened right now. The assembly hall going to be closed and renovated, going to be changed up now. They're at that point in the whole process of everything. Um, it is such a mess. Downtown Salt Lake, for as successful, and everyone here has been pounding their chest about how Utah's the best state and our this, that, and the other is so low, and our what downtown is such a garbage heap. It's so terrible. It's so terrible. Main Street, and this is not necessarily religious, but like it's filthy. And there's no businesses, and the businesses that are there struggle, and it's something that they thought with City Creek that City Creek would help out with it, and it certainly has helped out some, but it's it is not a downtown like like your downtown even Los Angeles or your downtown New York or your downtown whatever. Like it, there are so many shuttered. Oh, that used to be this. Oh, they're saving to build this. So that will one day be this thing that you don't have the downtown that you would want. And I don't think you'll see it come back until Temple
So
Square can be a destination and you could go down there for the night.
one more question I have about that. Like, as far as the Christmas lights at Temple Square, what were they
Mhm.
like this year? And are they going to be better next year and more accessible, or do people, has it been scaled back because you can't really get in and around there?
uh Wholly scaled back, both because you can't get in there. There still was like some to it, but the other thing is, you remember when we were kids, going to Temple Square, and it's like millions of lights, right? We're like, oh
Right.
my gosh, and the one, I think it was a cedar of Lebanon tree that was red, and you'd just be like, is that tree on fire? I can't, right? Whatever.
Mm.
They don't
Yeah.
do that anymore because it was killing the trees.
Oh,
So there's a whole part of it where we're like, oh, well, it's things aren't like they used to, and it's because
when
like
I was a kid.
the arborists are like, guys, we can't. This is not a thing we should continue to be doing. So that's part of it, and they didn't, and I think they would own it. They didn't want the foot traffic in these spaces that couldn't accommodate a lot of foot traffic. So
Sure.
it'll
I'm
revitalize it once it's finished, but man, they've given no sort of date. I think they said 26 was the nearest year that they said that the temple
Yeah,
would be reopened.
I think it'll be really fascinating to see, and I think there'll be lots of speculation in the months and years to come about what that open house is going to be like.
Sure.
But it'll be an interesting time for downtown Salt Lake, I'm sure.
Well, and you have to imagine a million plus easy, because it is iconic enough that people will come from other places to go there. It's the most visited place in the state of Utah, maybe secondary to Delicate Arch, but I would think maybe Temple Square far more.
Yeah, I would imagine so. The yeah, just the number of people that perhaps their whole life have been like, oh, I've been fascinated with that building, and like now have the chance to go in it. Oh, I think
Mm-hmm.
it'd be an interesting. I would imagine the open house will go for months.
Yeah, 6 months easy, half a year
Yeah.
easily, easily. And further speculation, how normally they do, how they will normally do just like the congregations affected or in the temple district for that it'll be a whole
Oh,
church
for
dedication,
the oh yeah, I for sure. That
guaranteed.
I mean that pattern I think was established by Nauvoo.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah. But interesting, they didn't do that for St. George.
right.
St.
I
George
mean,
fair, the first temple in Utah. I mean, not technically. I mean, we had the one in Nauvoo, but then we kind of left it. But then, like the first,
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, there are other pioneer era temples, and like, Manti will probably be done soon, and then you got what Logan to consider and
Yeah, but
whatever
they
they.
won't do anything nearly anyway. Salt Lake
No,
will be
yeah, it won't be a big
iconic
thing.
and massive
Yeah.
as far as
So
the dedication goes. Uh,
so
what?
so I was gonna say, Brandon Flowers is speaking about the church again.
Yeah, which I love. I love how open he is about it. By the way, you can find the episode that we did with Brandon Flowers in the show notes. We have had him here. That's lead singer of the Killers. We've had him here in the Cultural Hall. You can find that link in the show notes. A long time it was a teasing that I didn't know was actually going to be able to happen. It's episode 241, so you can go back and check it out. Obviously, way
I,
easier if you're a Patreon saint.
I think it's interesting. Like, one of the things I found fascinating about the I'm a Mormon campaign,
Mm-hmm.
like looking at it now, is some of those people aren't in the church anymore. And I think it's interesting that, like, to have someone who is so high profile, who is still, talking about his relationship with the Savior.
Well, and I mean, it's interesting for me just as I look at the people that I've visited with who have very compelling stories and have borne very sincere testimonies here in the Cultural Hall. And you look back through and you go, nope, nope, nope. It's the nature of faith, I suppose. But Brandon Flowers,
Yeah.
part of a series. It's a new docu-series called Jonathon and Jesus. And you're wondering, wait a minute, Brandon isn't a part of that title at all.
And Jonathon isn't, I don't know who Jonathon is.
Yeah. Jonathon Raumi is the actor who plays Jesus in the Not by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, The Chosen, although we have fully adopted it.
As much as my stake president talks about it, you would think it was.
I mean, it's on BYU TV, so we certainly have endorsed it. Angel Studios, a couple of the guys that do that stuff. I think the
Yeah,
DOP is a LDS guy. Like tons of people on the staff are LDS, and certainly people have come at the director saying, "Hey, you're doing this from a Mormon perspective now. You've changed. You've changed."
right.
Um, he
But
is
a
Jonathan.
widely regarded series that's not just from our church.
Jonathan Raumi, travels to Salt Lake City to meet Brandon Flowers, lead singer of the Killers, in the new docuseries Jonathon and Jesus. Gives a peek into what it's like for him to play Jesus in this series, Chosen. So, kind of an interesting behind the scenes sort of thing. And then
I
talks
haven't
about
seen the episode yet, but I was kind of surprised that he went to meet Brandon Flowers in Salt Lake, because I would have thought for sure they'd go to Vegas and, like, they could enjoy a buffet together while they talk
well,
about.
but I don't, as I understand, Flowers doesn't spend much time in Vegas anymore. He's got a home in Park City, studio in Park City as well. So there's no reason for him to get down to where his roots are, or as we would say here, his roots down in in Las Vegas. It's on Amazon Prime if people want to check it out, and I do. I think it's interesting enough. And you know that he's visiting with Brandon Flowers because we can say, "Hey, this is Brandon Flowers of the Killers," and people will talk about it on their shows available in podcast form and give it more attention.
Exactly. Their strategy worked.
Done. Let's go here to this story, shall we? Latter-day Saints have significantly fewer student loans, according to a national survey. It says that on average, 38% of people between the ages of 20 to 40 with at least some college education report having student loan obligations. Religious groups in the sample largely mirror the national average, and the difference between, say, Catholics and Protestants is negligible. However, Latter-day Saints have much measurably lower student loans, with only 26% of Latter-day Saints between the ages of 20 and 40 having some college indicating that they have student loan obligations. So, why do you think it is?
That church members have lower.
Yeah.
Um, I feel like debt's always something that the church warns against. I think, the opportunities for the church has made it a priority to provide opportunities for people to get an education, not just here in the United States, obviously
Sure.
at BYU, but
BYU pathway, sure.
the pathways is a great example, but that's kind of an outgrowth of what did it used to be called? The Perpetual Education Fund.
Sure.
Like, I think making it a priority to help members get an education is always been part of the church, or has been for decades. So I think that trickles down to folks.
So,
Um,
I would push against it because I think the other thing that within the church is, listen, a debt that you can get into is going to school. Getting an education, getting knowledge. That's what we're here for. So, in your thought, do you think it is more that speaks more to the fact that like the church financially supports like all the BYUs and those things, subsidizes those things and makes those schools more affordable, and that's why we're in less student debt? Or, as you maybe indicated at the beginning, that we teach the principle of get out of debt, don't have debt, don't be debtors to other people, and that's why we're lower.
I think it's more the latter. I think it's probably more common for people in the church to have had conversations about debt and the impacts of debt and the purpose of debt and like the severity of debt, and like more so than like maybe people who are, obviously they don't necessarily teach that in high school.
Mm.
Like that's what people like to say. So I think maybe that's part of it. I think it'd be interesting to look at perhaps the amount of debt that church members own, not just
So
the
maybe
number of
those
people with debt.
26% have far greater amounts. Is that
Yeah,
what
I mean, like I think about like I know here I think of the number of Mormon dentists or Mormon lawyers or Mormon like people who are in those fields that like are doctors and attorneys like that. Like I wouldn't say the church would be pro going into debt to get you wouldn't necessarily like a generic degree, right?
like a
But
theater
like if
degree?
you,
Go ahead, say it. Go ahead and say it.
yeah,
Like an arts degree. Your
I mean, like,
liberal arts degree.
I feel like there'd be a discussion about like I feel like it'd be more inclined to have the discussion about like the usefulness of the degree and what the profession's going to pay. And
Mhm.
I think locally, at least in Utah, I feel like colleges have to be competitive and price themselves in a way. I know that several of the universities have like tried to lower the cost of what it costs to get a 4-year degree,
Sure, sure.
and
Our
so all of
very own
that plays
alma
into it.
mater.
But I think the idea that like there are a lot of people that are in those. I mean, it's not uncommon for members of the church to be in those positions, and like Mormons in dental school. Like I think the wards around dental schools are an interesting occurrence in the church. And I think so it'd be interesting to me to know of the members that do have student loans, like is the balance on average greater? Because I
Yeah.
think it would be.
I would also be interested to know how much of it is because within the church, it seems, and maybe this is just my perception of everything, that it seems like within the church that we sort of adopt these traditional roles, meaning if I, the man, am going to go do a thing and I'm married and I'm in my young 20s and I need to do this thing because that's going to be my profession, that I go after that, and you, my wife, you quit and you pay for, you get the full-time job to put me through this thing and then do that. That also seems like maybe that would play into at least a portion of why we would have less debt, because we try and pay it as we go, because we do that. Whereas maybe other other beliefs, other different systems maybe don't push those traditional roles as much, and they would both still get into debt, and then you would have the debt between the two of them.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why the church is so pro not going into debt and or helping make college affordable is so that people don't put off having a family, because that's such an important part of the gospel, and important thing that is a core value of the gospel is like we don't wait to start a family for you to have finish your dental degree. We want you to start right now.
Yeah. Our time grows short, so I just want to hit a couple more stories. One, we have had multiple conversations in the cultural hall here about making the gospel available for everyone. We talked about the 4 languages of the church earlier. It's certainly, you know, Portuguese and Spanish. But also there are new
Sign
gospel
language.
symbols that are available,
Oh yeah.
which I think
Some
is
of them are hilarious.
I think they're great. I think they're so great. They some of them it does a little bit remind me of like clip art from the late 90s,
For sure.
but to be able to, teach people that otherwise would not be able to learn about Jesus or about the scriptures or, any number of these symbols. I think it's just tremendous that we're considering these people now more than ever, and that now they're able to add 150 symbols into the gospel library to say,
And
hey, look at this.
and hundreds more on the way. And I think it's fascinating for people who are not verbal. It's it makes it an easy way to, or a less challenging way to, teach the gospel. I think it's great.
Yep. They recommend it for, like you mentioned, nonverbal, cognitive delays, neurodiverse, parents teaching at home, teachers instructing at church. There are several uses of this, and I just think that I think it's an amazing consideration that we're making for this. The two stories I want to end on is let's go to Florida real quick. I'm telling you what, I
You
want
mean Mormon?
it's starting to be that way.
It's
The
better than a Mormon does, always better than Nebraska.
Yeah. Or Nemorma. Nemorm. No, more
I'm
Braska. I
sorry.
like that.
This is one of those examples where the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, it doesn't roll
Yeah.
off the tongue
Yeah.
as well.
No. The church paid, I should say, 174.3 million dollars for the Beacon Logistics Park in Hialeah, according to property records. The sale features 4 warehouses that were completed between 2020 and 2022, and another 2 that are under construction. The biggest transaction, which amounted to 97.8 million, includes 2 industrial buildings on 50 acres. One building totals 229,336 square feet, and the other 149,850 square feet. The 2 other warehouses, 210,000 square feet. And people are mad that we would do this.
Now, I saw the story. I saw that they were buying the land, and the church has done that a lot.
Mhm.
So it's not new that the church
Mhm.
buys commercial property. The thing that I didn't know, and maybe you did from your dive into the story, was, are they buying it to become the landlords of the existing businesses that are there, or is this potentially something like maybe they need a new factory to build their modular temples, or are they using it for something like that?
Well, so one of the things that I heard is, um, and this is my very favorite, which is speculation with no sort of backup, is when you think about Miami, you think of where it is in relation to like the islands of the Caribbean or access to other places. Some people said, listen, of course, why wouldn't we want massive warehouses where we could store goods in the event of an emergency in Miami? And that to me makes sense. I don't think that's what they're doing. I think it's similar to like what they're doing in England that we've mentioned, similar to what they're doing in Philadelphia, where they said and it's great financial business. It's like
It's like your
when
grandma always said, they're not making any more land.
yeah, for them to buy it and say, listen, we're going to pay 174 million and we're going to charge 300 million a year in rent or whatever. That makes sense. Let's do this. Game on. Obviously, those aren't the numbers. That's not the spread that they're making, but they are wise. They will allow people in, make money off of it, and maybe the transition will be to something like what we altruistically hope that it would be for. But likely it's just, hey, here's a great investment, great deal on a building. We come in, we're one of the big players. We say, here, we'll pay for that in cash. We'll take that. Thank you. And people go, yeah, we'll sell you the thing because that's why we built it. So we could sell it to someone like you who would do it and a thing like that. And then we make money off of it.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that's hard for people to just separate the
Mhm.
for-profit businesses of the church that aren't church. Like they're, I mean, I'm going to assume that they're not these properties aren't going to be labeled as religious buildings, and so they're going to pay property taxes on them.
Yeah.
It's not like KSL doesn't pay taxes on their income because it's owned by the church. Like it's the business side
Yeah,
of
it's part
things,
of the
which
for-profit entity of the church.
right.
I mean, people forget, and I know that we've talked about it here in the Cultural Hall, but we own a high-rise building in Philadelphia where people reside.
Yeah. I don't know that I want the church to be my landlord, but
No.
like,
And there are some interesting aspects of all of that that I just am like, yeah, get comfortable with it. The name is literally the Corporation of the President of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It feels weird. It sounds
yeah.
even weirder, but it is what it is. Let's go here, and then I'll let you get back to work. We got to let him out of the soundproof booth. An 81-year-old man has been charged with a felony after reportedly stalking an LDS church leader. Now, I want to walk into this sensitively because I recognize that this man is not full of his faculties. He's not all there, I would suspect.
There's some issues for sure.
Victor Otto Erickson is his name, 81. He was charged with felony first-degree stalking on Christmas Eve, or I'm sorry, on New Year's Eve. Man, going to church in this church on New Year's Eve, you never know what you're going to get. You might have
You're gonna get a plastic shovel with a note from this guy.
According to court documents, Erickson has not only been trespassed from this church, but every single LDS church in the nearby area. The police states that a civil protection order was already in place for the victim, that being the person that Erickson was stalking. It expires in 2025, so it's fairly new that it's been in place, because I think you can only issue those things for a couple years. The victim and another church leader confronted Erickson when they saw him in. He reportedly gave them a plastic yellow shovel, 12 inches long, with 2 handwritten cards. One of the cards read, Revelations 2012, keep digging.
Thus the shovel.
Exactly. And the other one read,
I think it's important that we recognize that if you're going to tell someone to do something like keep digging, it's helpful to provide a shovel.
Yes. Yes. Because if you want them to do it, give
You
them
want them to
the
be
skills,
successful.
give them the skills and tools to be able to accomplish what you're asking.
He's
Yes.
learned well.
The other one read, arrest and prosecute me, you dim-witted spiritual buffoon.
I'd like to point out that I wish he would have said baboon rather than buffoon, and then had a stuffed baboon with him to keep
It's a
the
missed
gifts going.
opportunity.
But you know,
I mean,
I don't want to make light of it because it's obviously it's a difficult situation, and there's probably a lot more than the story indicates to it. But I know that like when in my time as a member of the bishopric, one of the counselors leaned over to me and was like, "That guy right there, it's so and so's son. If you ever see him come to the church again, be ready." I'm like, "Oh yeah." And there was a couple of others that were like that I'd never met that were like, "If this person comes, like, be ready to call the police." And I was like, "What?"
Yeah.
So I think religion in general has the opportunity to attract people that have unique ideas and are willing to do unique things. So I'm glad that they were safe and got the police involved.
He'll go to court. He'll have his day in court on the 12th of January. Another time, he, as law enforcement were talking to him, he said to them, follow the spiritual law, as they were putting him in handcuffs. And that he was, in fact, following the spiritual law. So he didn't have to follow state and federal laws. They arrested him because he's, of course, breaking the civil protection, $25,000 bond. He could face up to 5 years in prison, but may part of that be that he gets the help that he needs.
Yeah, I mean, Grandpa, you need to not go to church anymore.
Yeah, and what do you do in that sort of situation if you're the loved one of that person and you just see that that's happening, or you even, you know, because where he's had incident before and there's civil protection order, like if that's your grandpa or that's your loved one or just in your ward, like where do you insert yourself into something like that, or do you when you know, oh geez, this is not going this is not going well. This continues to go poorly. And then you see that individual in church.
Yeah, yeah, there's a lot to it, and it's uncomfortable, but thankfully, police were involved. They took care of it, and no one was hurt.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
They've got their shovel ready to
Uh,
go.
I know you got to go, but we got to mention this last one. The law enforcement officers made arrests in the overnight crime binge involving the burglaries of 10 LDS churches in Eagle Mountain. We talked about this. This was back in September. The Utah County Sheriff's Office arrested a 20-year-old South Jordan man, according to court documents, and now he's charged with 19 felonies and 5 misdemeanors.
He must really like metal folding chairs.
Well, apparently he just sort of broke in because the whole thing, all of the different churches, etc., like $18,000 in totality. He took some donation slips that had some money attached, which you're not supposed to do, wards. You get it to the bank as soon as you possibly can. I know that protocol. Damages to the doorways is mainly what made up that $18,000. Investigators got a break in the case when they noticed that Salt Lake County had several similar burglaries and a suspect in custody who had confessed to the Eagle Mountain Capers, which, if you're going to have churches be broken into, call them the Eagle Mountain Capers. His name, Lee Pierce Baker. 19 charges. All right, that's it. We hope that this episode has nourished and strengthened your body.
It has.
And that if you're not healthy enough to listen this week, that you'll be healthy enough to listen next week. Are you doing one of these?
No, I feel like you try to do this every time with me, and I never know what to say.
And that when the time comes, you'll be able to travel home in safety. In just a second, you're going to say on the back row.
If you don't bless the refreshments, so help me.
There it is. In the meantime, we'll be saving a seat for you
on the back row of the cultural hall.
The cultural hall.